People in entertainment will tell you never to make the mistake of having, like, the warm-up opening act be an act that's going to overshadow the main attraction. After watching that video, I sort of think that anything I say is sort of paled in just the words of that song. I hope it was impactful to you. Especially to me was the line that your baby is the great I am. The great I am. The Lord of all creation come to us. Can you imagine Mary looking at that baby? Those of you that have had your own children or grandchildren, you know the wonder you feel when you first look in their face. And Mary was looking at her baby, feeling that this is my child, but knowing the angel had told her this would be the Son of God. And Joseph himself knowing that this was to be the Messiah. And they were told, you will call him Jesus. Why? For he will save his people from their sins. The wonder, the amazement they must have felt, even in those humble surroundings, because they could not find a place to stay. Yet they had a place where love was born on that night so many years ago. I think that the trouble with too many of us, and I'm not saying this to guilt anybody, I'm not saying this as an accusation, I think it happens to so many of us. And it's why I said at the beginning of our Christmas program today, we're going to hear the story again. You've all heard it many times. Those of you that grew up in Sunday school and the church, maybe you played parts in many a Sunday school or church program. You played, I remember wearing the bathrobes as the shepherds and all of the others. And some of you might have played angels. Some of you might have played Mary or Joseph. And you've heard the story. You've heard the words. And unfortunately, sometimes we can unconsciously almost tune out. We've lost the wonder. Back in '99, in January, after I finished my 11 years as pastor of the Sebago, Maine Church of the Nazarene, I went down to Fort Worth to live for 5 or 6 months to be near my son, his wife, and their 2 little children, 2 and a newborn. And remember, I left in January, the middle of a Maine, New England winter, and I was in Fort Worth. It was an especially warm February, many 80-degree days. And I remember the first 80-degree day in February that came. I was like most of you would be. I thought, oh, wow, you've got to get out and enjoy it. And not too far away from where I was living in a camper trailer in the parking lot of a nice Nazarene lady at the church where my son and his family went in Fort Worth, the Church of the Nazarene there. I went over to, it's like a park around a large lake that was made by a dam. It was probably an area as big as Sebago Lake in Maine. Sebago Lake is like 8 miles by 14 miles. It's the size of the Sea of Galilee. Well, it was only about 10 feet deep, but it still was beautiful. And it had, picnic areas and places all around it. And I went there. It's February. It's 80 degrees. The skies are blue. I expected a packed park because if we had that kind of day here, everyone would be outside because we would be amazed in wonder, in awe. And we'd go out because, wow, this doesn't happen often. You know what? I was in a deserted place. And I looked around and I thought, where is everybody? And after living there a few more weeks and months, I realized why the place wasn't packed. You know why? It was no big deal. They had seen that before. They'd seen 80 degrees in February, Nothing special to them. They knew another day would come. If they didn't get out that day, there'd be another one. Those kind of things become so familiar that we lose the wonder. And to me, it was just so wonderful to get out in the middle of winter and enjoy that kind of a summer day. I think of other things. I've told before the story about the very first jet plane ride I've ever taken. Larry and I, when we were in high school, went to Colorado, flying on a chartered plane with the New England district and the Maine district teens that had been chosen for International Institute. And we flew out of Logan. It was my first time on a jet. And it was a kind of, I think, grayish, sort of a day like today it started out. And we flew up, and when we got above the clouds, it was the first time I'd ever experienced seeing the tops of clouds like cotton balls and beautiful, and the sun, golden sun shining. And it was like, wow. I've traveled by plane many a time now, and though I might notice that, it doesn't quite have that impact anymore. I'm not like, wow, in amazement at what I'm seeing, because it's become familiar. In '83, some of you know that I had major surgery, that I had less than a 50% chance of surviving. In fact, the 4 days leading up to when they did the emergency surgery, they didn't know what was wrong. They told my parents that they were losing me. My dad ended up having a heart attack. And not right then, but within that week, because they thought that I was going to die. I made it through. After 7.5 weeks in the hospital, I was relieved, and here I am. But I say all of that because the very next year, I took my first trip to California. And I made my way to, I don't know which beach, I think it was Venice Beach or whatever, and I saw the Pacific Ocean for the first time. Now, I grew up not far from the Atlantic Ocean, so I'd seen oceans many a time in my life. I was 28 when I went to California for the first time. But I have to tell you, stepping into that water less than a year after I had almost died and thought I might never make it there, what an amazement and awe that I felt just to be there at the Pacific Ocean. Well, I've been back to California probably 7 or 8 times since, and I look at the ocean and it's pretty, but it doesn't have that same wonder. And I think that's what's happened for so many of us when we go through the Christmas season. It just doesn't have that wonder. You know, when we're a child, we can't wait for Christmas morning. You know, Christmas night, we want to make sure the cookies and milk are out. And we listen for every sound, waiting for Santa to come. And does that child wonder about that part of Christmas? But now that we're adults and we've heard the story over and over, it's sort of like, well, as some of my friends says, I can't wait till Christmas is over. Makes me think of the story of the harried lady who was out doing last-minute Christmas shopping in a big downtown department store, thinking to herself, oh, I can't wait till it's over. Her hands are full of the packages and bags that she's purchased, and she gets to the elevator, the doors open, and she looks in. It's packed. Everyone's grudgingly, squeezes over, this is pre-COVID, to let her in. And she finds her way in, and as those doors close, she says to no one in particular, I'll be glad when Christmas is over. I don't know whoever invented this thing, but he should be taken out and strung up. And everyone, many nodded in agreement, but then from the back of the crowded elevator came the voice, they already did that to him. You see, folks? Those of us who have been touched by the hand of God who came, that's why I love the Night Love Was Born video. They have the cross prominently in those scenes of the baby in the manger, because that's what it's all about. And we have been touched by the hand of God. We sing Emmanuel, God with us. Well, you and I who have been born again, it's not just that God is with us at Emmanuel, but God is with us every day that we are living on this earth, and he walks with us and talks with us. And we should have that same amazement when it comes to Christmas. We should be filled with joy when we look at the lights that just remind us of the light that God has brought into our dark world and into our dark lives. We should be so filled with wonder. As Mary holds that baby, I wonder if she realized and if she felt what 2 songs have said, that she was looking at the face of God. Remember what Jesus said? If you've seen me, you have seen God, right? She was looking at God. And the shepherds, out in that night. If I had time today, I would have played that beautiful fun song, nothing ever happens to a shepherd. I don't know if you've heard that. We've played it a couple times here. It's just so wonderful. And they probably were feeling the same thing. They were the dregs of society out there on the hillside, They were sort of like dirty, smelly men who lived with animals. And they didn't expect that all of a sudden the bright light would shine and the angel would come with a message. And then the other angels would join in, a whole host of angels, telling them, glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace and goodwill to men, telling them about the birth of Jesus. Think of the amazement that they felt. And when the angels went back to heaven, we all read, their first thought was, let's go see what we've been told. And they went to the manger, and can you imagine what they felt as they saw the baby Jesus? Do you remember what they did after that? They went and told everyone, because they were so excited and so filled with amazement and awe that they, the lowly shepherds, had to receive a special message from the angels about the birth of Jesus. Have we still that same wonder as we come today to this time of Christmas? I want to read a couple verses from God's Word to tell you that it wasn't just the baby that brought amazement and wonder. Way back in the Old Testament, in Habakkuk 1:5, look at the nations and watch and be utterly amazed. For I am going to do something in your days that you would not believe even if you were told. Be utterly amazed, God said, because I'm going to do something that's going to blow your socks off. You're not going to believe it. Then Jesus, we don't hear a lot about him until he was 12. Remember, he was in the temple. And there in the temple, we read this in Luke 4. Everyone who'd heard him talking with the teachers in the temple, they were amazed at his teaching because his words had authority. Well, of course they did. This is the Son of God. This is the great I am embodied in human flesh. And they were amazed. And all through the scriptures, Mark and Matthew and Luke, you see that it says when people heard Jesus, they were amazed. I just did a search on the word amazed. I love Bible.com. It's so easy. And it's amazing how many times people were amazed by the boy Jesus and the man Jesus just beginning his ministry. His words carried weight because of who he was. And anyone who saw him was filled with amazement. In Mark, it says the people were all so amazed that they asked each other, what is this? A new teaching, and with authority. And then later on in Mark 6, when the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were amazed. People in Mark 7 were overwhelmed with amazement. He has done everything well, they said. Of course he has. He is God in human form, flesh. He has done everything. And all throughout Luke, everyone was amazed and gave praise to God. They were filled with awe and said, we have seen remarkable things today. I pray for you and for your pastor that we not lose the sense of amazement, wonder, and awe when we think that God, the King of the universe, came to earth to be born in such humble beginnings. No red carpets, no trumpet sounds by the earth people, no dignitaries to show up except for the three wise kings who came from afar to see this newborn king because they had seen his star. And yet he came because why? He loved you and he loved me. And we have been touched by that love. Paul would say we should have that same attitude of Jesus, who though he was equal to God, did not hold on to it, but he gave it up to come, even to be obedient to what? Death on a cross. He who was rich gave it all up and became poor that you and I might become rich. That should amaze every one of us today when we think of what Christmas means. The God who created everything we see, loved us so much to come to save us. And here we are today. Larry's going to play